Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it Epcot. Will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
All right, welcome to another edition of the Retro Disney World Podcast. This is episode 33, entitled Retro Food, where we'll be taking you back into the days of all sorts of different restaurants and food items that are no longer there. I'm your host, Todd McCartney, and sitting in with me, as always, is Mr. JT Kuzier from Ohio. How's it going, JT?
Doing well. How we doing, Todd?
Pretty good. Getting a little chilly here at the nights.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Heater, air conditioner, what do you pick? Just open the windows?
The pool's just not doing well anymore. Summer's over. But Mr. Brian P. Miles, we went for a swim this weekend. You got a little last minute pool time in.
Got my last outdoor swim in. So,
outdoor swim, there we go. Yeah.
And then I'll swim on Epcot 35 weekend at the end of the month. Of course, when we're in the Sunshine State, where it's summer year round.
That's right, just a few weeks away.
But in the interim, greetings from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Brian. Welcome as always. And reporting in tonight with his spaghetti plots in hand, monitoring the Hurricane Irma situation as it bears down potentially on Florida, is Mr. Hal Bowers. How you doing tonight, Hal?
Good. We're having spaghetti tonight as we go with the spaghetti plots to keep it all food related. Yeah.
Do you have little placemats, like laminate placemats? You lay the spaghetti out where you think it's going to go.
That's right.
How best of luck in the meantime. I'm sure our listeners will be listening right as it's all going down, if anything goes down, right?
That's true. I guess by the time you hear this, it'll all be over, whatever it was.
Or that you're listening to this in whatever shelter that you've taken.
Oh, yeah.
Because we have a calming influence.
In which case, we hope the food is better than maybe what we're going to discuss tonight.
Oh, good connection.
Yeah. But before we get too forward in tonight, let's roll back to last month for some comments and corrections. Now, do you guys remember I said, anybody know anything about a pet food pump or a dog food pump that moved?
The dog food pump.
Yeah, the lava in Universe of Energy, as we talked about that last month. I did some digging, and Progress City USA actually did mention it in one of his articles, where he says that the Imagineers faced a new challenge of finding a suitable pump to cycle the lava up and down, because it was, really thick and viscous, I guess. Conventional pumps quickly seized up, and after experimentation, they discovered a mechanism that's ideally suited to moving the highly viscous substance, a pump that is used to fill dog food cans. So, my personal recollection, and that little anecdote there, I'd call this one confirmed. I'd love to get some more information on it if we could, but kind of interesting.
Hashtag confirmed.
There we go. Yep.
I can just picture a very 80s Epcot documentary, like, no ordinary pump could pump this lava. We needed the pump from Bill Jack Dog Food. Like, just some really, in-depth, serious comment about it.
T-shirt idea, Hal. T-shirt idea.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
People will be clamoring for that.
Lava pet food pump.
Alpo.
That's right. The next thing we got is Marty Alchin called out on one of our tweets. Some of our tweets, the photos that are come out daily are automatic, and they pick randomly from our database of 3,000-4,000 different retro photos. And one of them was a early concept model of Epcot. And we mentioned last month that energy was never in a different spot. Turns out, thanks to Marty pointing this out in our very own tweet, energy was in a different spot. It was over where Living Seas is right now. So it is interesting. So that did indeed move at one point, which was pretty neat.
But south still. It was still in the same relative position.
I guess
actually we just had that image flipped, probably. It's
Actually, Brian, I did find a similar. I stumbled upon one this week too. That was that was that showed it over in that other position too, and I was like, oh hey, what do you know?
Brian, we have another one, right? Something about the turntables?
Yeah, I knew somewhere in my archives I had grabbed a screen full of conversation between ex-cast members about those turntables, and for the life of me, I couldn't find it when we were doing the episode last month on the universe of energy and its unique drive system. But I did find it subsequently. So it's a conversation between three people. Their names are not germane to this conversation, but they talk about the turntables had a big problem and that they had to import a special talcum powder to cover underneath of it. And then two of the guys that worked on it come back and say that they added 3 colors in half-inch stripes next to the in-ground wire on the testing track. It was supposed to distinguish the animation stops. The weight itself, along with 50 guests per car, made it a gigantic challenge. Another guy says originally the surface was to be concrete, but the overworking of the concrete to obtain just the right surface and level weakened the bond, so that when they fired up the air bearing that the turntables rode on, the concrete shattered. So the turntables needed to be removed, and they installed some steel plates. And then they talk about how there were e-stops put in, and how in the beginning those vehicles, when they were testing them, were known to crash into the show scenes while they were perfecting.
Yikes.
Just like a robot nightmare.
Yeah. I mean, this really shows the testament. That thing ran for 30 years. I mean, think about it. It was amazing enough with the engineering that they had to do, but they had to go back and re-engineer a lot of this. It's,
yeah, can you imagine firing that up and all of a sudden hearing, what was that? Oh, the concrete just collapsed underneath of it.
Yeah, we waited all these days to cure it and took care of it.
So it's really a good thing that they finished that building 18 months before the rest of the park.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, all right, and our last comment and correction from last month. Do you guys remember we had a little audio contest, right? We put out part of the song.
Oh, yes.
Yep. Bob
audio
Moline
poll, yes.
Audio poll here on whether or not they heard Graces or Braces. So let's just refresh our listeners. Energy, you make the world go round. Let's hear the acoustic demo version of that song.
Bringing our lives new graces.
What did you guys hear him say? Bringing our lives new
graces.
Graces. Okay, I agree. He says graces. Now let's hear the version from the attraction.
Bringing our lives new graces.
I hear something different. You guys still hear?
Graces.
All right, I hear braces. All right, so we asked all of you to write in. Here is the final tally, guys, of what people have been hearing over the years. We have a new entry. Getting 1 vote is faces. I've never heard faces before, but we had 1 vote for faces. Getting 8 votes was graces. And braces received 14 votes.
Whoa.
So a fair margin there between graces and braces. So a lot of people, just like myself, thought he was saying braces. And maybe, I don't know how you're the musician in the group. You think it's just a pronunciation or a post-production edit change or mixing thing that did it?
So based on Brian and I listening with headphones versus listening through speakers, if you listen through headphones, you could definitely hear graces, but that initial was a little low. So if you just listen over speakers without the benefit of like the higher dynamic range, like it sounds like braces. So I actually A/B tested it like speakers versus headphones, and in headphones I heard graces just fine, but I will agree over speakers it sounds just like he's saying braces.
Okay. So all right, so there we go.
If you're listening to this, and you might want to rewind now and play it back on with some headphones, because we just played the clip for you, you can compare.
Yep, and tell us if you...
And you really want to find some circa 1982 headphones to get the full retro experience.
The big 1/4-inch jack, right?
Yes.
You might need to get an adapter.
The adapter affects braces versus graces.
Yes.
Well, thanks everybody for writing in for that, and it was fun. Howard, you've got one more thing before before JT runs out to the mailbag. You've got one more item for this
Yes. So I know as many people as can are already signed up to come to our event, and in the course of doing that, we found another really cool event that's coming up, particularly for fans of Journey into Imagination. So the Disney Project, which is at the Disney Project on Twitter, he is doing a really cool event coming up on October 28th with Imagineer Tom Morris and one of the two original Dreamfinders, Steve Taylor. And they will be talking. They'll be, if you have been on Twitter at all and you've seen any of the photos that Tom Morris has been tweeting out, he's basically going to be doing like a live narration over a slideshow. He's got incredible pictures of the construction and behind the scenes that we've never seen before, which are just fantastic. You can get tickets there and get more information about it by going to disneyproject.com/events. And I believe the tickets are $45 a piece. Very, very inexpensive. Should be really cool.
And this is one of those times where the other three of us are very jealous of how living in Florida within driving distance of this event. So
Yeah, we'd love to come down and do it.
Yeah, I mean, with us coming down together for, October 1st, there's no way to get us back together again.
Right.
But I'm sure, we've been talking about doing a Journey into Imagination episode. And I think one of the other reasons besides energy happening with that closing, it's like one of the other reasons to hold off is I fully feel it's like we're going to get a whole bunch of new information during this event that we have never heard before.
for those of you that don't know, Tom Morris retired within the last year from Imagineering, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's been doing this giant document dump since he retired of the stuff he accumulated over 30 plus years of working for Imagineering, and has worked on just a lot of cool projects over the last 30 years. So should be a really interesting guy to listen to.
Thank you very much for that, Hal, and hopefully some of our listeners can attend that. All right, JT, mailbag time. I think you've got one or two of them in there for us this month, right? What do you got?
A couple. Yeah. First one is actually a pretty good connection to our event later this month. This is from Mike Mara. He's saying hello from Delaware County, PA, Brian.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah, there you go. He says, I found your podcast last week or a few weeks ago. He started listening to it from the beginning.
Binge listening.
Best of luck to you, yeah. He mentioned describing the monorails in the Tom Nabby interview. Tom says that the monorails were using diesel electric, but he also made it clear that they ran on 600-volt DC on the rail, hence the need for the Nabby grabber. In mine and his father's memory, he never remembers the monorails being diesel electric. Is this correct? What was Tom referring to? Just curious on that one.
Yep. So Mike and I went back and forth on this and exchanged some emails, and it's a good question. And he said he went back and listened to the episode where Nabby's on, and we kind of clarified. So I believe what Tom was speaking of was the maintenance tug, which is certainly a diesel powered device, maybe not necessarily diesel electric. But does run on diesel power so that in the event of an electrical emergency or any other type of emergency, they can get to the monorails and pull them in. So I think it was just kind of a miscommunication there, and maybe on something that Tom said. But I've never heard of, and nor I don't think, Tom's the expert. When you have a man who walked the monorail beams, I don't think anything was ever made to be diesel electric, and that would be probably pretty loud and not to mention smoky and all sorts of fumes and such. So.
Very futuristic, pulling into the contemporary with your diesel fumes.
Fume of smoke. You can imagine Bob Hope just passing out as he comes out, just weirdly.
She's run a little rich today, folks. Hold your breath through that.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Mike. What else we got there, JT?
This one's from Reese, and I kind of did a little digging on this. Maybe you guys can chime in. Reese, their regular writer, I'll say, was saying, I was wondering if you knew anything about the voice actor for Buzzy in Cranium Command. She says, in all the videos she watched, it seems like his voice has changed from the pre-show, to the actual attraction. It makes me feel like they're two different people. Did they use two different voice actors? She was wondering if the videos that are on YouTube have created this illusion, just over time. I just kind of looked into this very quickly, but also found that they credit one person. You are correct, Scott Curtis, doing this. I could be wrong on this. Maybe one of the other guys will say something, but I'm guessing it was just due to the audio quality and the two attractions coming from like a, kind of thrown together pre-show screen to the actual ride attraction being different, but I could be wrong.
How is this another audio speaker issue we've uncovered here?
I don't know. I mean, I would... There's a little bit of a history of that attraction of having a false start and then starting up again. So my understanding is there was a third-party company that was contracted initially to put the attraction together, and I think, Brian, you have some additional info on that.
Yeah, I actually listened to but not a current podcast that was done in the last year or two by Tammy Tuckey, Tierra Talk, where she interviewed Jerry Rees, who did the Cranium Command attraction. And the story he told on her show was that MetLife itself actually wrote the first show. And at a certain point, he was called into a meeting with some of the senior guys in Imagineering, and I want to say it was Jeffrey Katzenberg or Michael Eisner or one of them, and I forget what other project he had worked on, what attraction he had just worked on, but they said, what do you think of this? And so he took the script and went home for the weekend and came back and said, well, here's all the problems with because what it was a very kind of scientific, and obviously if MetLife is writing it, it's all about healthy lifestyles and life insurance and things like that. And so he took and made it an interesting, fun attraction, and came up with the idea of casting actors in the known actors like John Lovitz and Dana Carvey in some of those roles, and ended up coming up with the whole Buzzy thing. So at some point, we're going to do a Cranium Command episode. In fact, we all kind of got into a conversation, having recently seen that the attraction is still 100% intact behind the walls there at the Wonders of Life Pavilion. Probably not for long, but it kind of spurred a conversation between the four of us that we should come back to this. My quick answer to Reese is I highly doubt that it is two different people, but it is very likely it was recorded at two different recording sessions as they tweak the script and the final product, which is not at all odd. A lot of times we find that bits and pieces of these attractions are recorded a year apart before it finally opens. So that's my guess as to what she's hearing.
Yeah, and being a young man, his voice could have been going through changes at that time too.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was a delay between when the main show was done and then when the pre-show was done, because I know they had to kind of scrap the version of the pre-show they had, and they hired in Gary Truesdale and Kirk Wise from Disney Animation to work on it. And based on the success of them basically saving the pre-show, they ended up getting to direct Beauty and the Beast. So
yes, that's we're gonna have
the famous story around that.
Yeah, we're gonna have to go back and listen. We'll all have to listen to that interview that Tammy did with Jerry Rees, because there's a lot of good stuff like that in there.
Yep.
So there you have it, Reese. The extremely amazing response by both of them. Totally awesome answers. So we'll be back on Cranium Command though eventually. So that's what I got. I'm sealing it up for now. Keep your comments, everything, emails, direct messages, Instagram comments, Facebook comments, anything could potentially be read live on the episode. Podcast at retrowdw.com.
And also too, don't forget, we haven't mentioned this in a while, but people can leave a voice message for us at 978-71-RETRO. So you call that number, you want to tell a little story, you got 2 minutes, tell us a little story, leave us a message, got some information for us, just want to say hi, sing a song, whatever you want to do. 978-71-RETRO.
So there you go, folks. Very easy to remember. Leave us your voice message. Totally awesome to hear those. We get notifications when those pop up, and they're super fun to listen to. So,
well, it's time to go into this month's Audio Rewind Puzzler. And guys, did you see the number of responses this month?
There were a lot of them.
There were a lot, almost as many as the last 2 months. So really flew in. They were coming quick and crazy. So before we get to the answer, let's take a listen to last month's Audio Rewind Puzzler. All right, if you guessed World of Motion, it's fun to be free. You are correct, and we have a winner. Last month's winner is Laura Haddon. Congratulations, Laura. And you will be receiving a set of retro WDW pins, as well as the photo envelope. So if you've got that 35mm film you have undeveloped since 1986, give it a drop in one of those photo bins that probably don't exist anymore, but you may just get your prints back. So... all right, so we need a prize for this month, and I have a spring 1983 Disney News magazine, and check this out, guys. It is perfect for this month. There is an article in here called Food, Glorious Food, Where to Beat the Munchies in and Around Disneyland and Disney World. Breakfast and lunch and dinner and all sorts of... All right, so this month we're going to throw in that Disney News Spring 1983. Lots of great stuff in it. So to win that, take a listen to this month's Audio Rewind Puzzler. If you think you know the answer to this month's Audio Rewind Puzzler, send your guesses to podcast@retrodwdw.com. All entries should be received by October 2nd, 2017. All correct entries will be entered into a random drawing to win this month's prize, which is the Disney News 1983 magazine. With that said, we also give away a prize pot at the end of this year. This is prize pot number 2 for 2017. And JT, you've been keeping track of what's in there. We've got 2 things, and you're about to add the third. So what do we got?
All right, from the top. Now, this is part 2 of the prize pot for our listeners. Yep. We had 2 items added in the past 2 episodes. First one was a 1971 Life magazine, classic cover, classic magazine. Second one was a 1971 Look magazine. So we have 2 magazines so far. I didn't want to add a magazine, but what I have here, pulled this out of my archives, this is from 1986. It is an Eastergram. It's an invitation to the Walt Disney World Easter egg hunt. Unused, and Sunday, March 30th, and it's got the rabbit from Alice in Wonderland. Tells you all the locations it could be, the Disney Inn, Polynesian Resort, all over the place, and the best line, the Easter Bunny has hidden hundreds of surprises for you. So, Eastergram is going into the prize pot.
All right, so in order to win the prize pot, all entries, regardless if they're correct or not, will be entered in the prize pot drawing that is coming out in December 2017. So get your answers in, and again, send them to podcast@retrodwdw.com. All right, guys, so it's time we get on the main topic, which, as we talked about at the top of the show, is retro food. We are all sitting here with all sorts of menus and memories of different restaurants that we've been to over the years. And we just got an email in from a listener sending us more scans of menus. We've got a lot to go through. But, Brian, why don't you give a little history of why we want to do this and why do we want to go over such a interesting, or maybe people don't think it's that interesting, but why do we want to go over this as an episode?
Well, that's what we've discovered when on occasion we have tweeted stuff or shared stuff on our sites related to some of the restaurants maybe that aren't there anymore, or old character meals. The response we get from people is immediate and often very intense. Almost as intense as some of those beloved attractions in the past. People remember places they went and ate with their family, or places where they had a unique meal or something that they really used to love. And it goes all the way back to the 70s. It goes back to when the parks opened. If you look at conversations between older cast members, there's one famous one that I've told you guys about a couple of times where a guy started talking about the buffet that they had at the Polynesian in the 70s and how it was the best fruit cocktail he ever had. And every week he would get in line for this amazing fruit cocktail, and nobody would go back for seconds for the prime rib. They'd go back for seconds of this fruit cocktail with the best peaches you ever tasted and things like that. So those are the kind of conversations that we end up finding ourselves in when we bring up some of these restaurants that used to be there, or menu items that used to be there. The Handwich being one of them. When I mentioned last month that we are building and putting together an archive of menus, of classic menus that we can, assemble from the parks and resorts that are no longer there, or just happen to be vintage menu items that aren't there. And as we started to gather what we have, it turns out between the 4 of us, we've got a pretty interesting and eclectic group of stuff. And then listeners have started to send us stuff. So we figured we'd have an episode where we talk about it and some of the things that people have brought to our attention. And it's either going to be extremely popular, or you guys are going to send us an email and say, please don't do that again.
There goes the idea of the just the cake episode.
Yeah, it's all pizzas, the history of pizza at the resort.
Well, I have a funny pizza story when we talk about the resorts.
Let's get going with the pizza right now, Todd. Lead off with the pizza.
So in 1980, we stayed at the Treehouse, and I remember late one night we got back from the park, and we were all hungry. And my father says, "All right, we'll order a pizza." They had, Disney had this little sheet there next to the phone. You could have a pizza delivered right to your treehouse, and that was big excitement for a little kid. The pizza comes, and my grandfather and my father describe it as basically wet cardboard with some sort of melted object on it. He said it was the most god-awful pizza ever.
Can we have the disclaimer that Todd and I, by default, because we live in the pizza corridor, that area from lower New England through maybe northern Virginia, where
with smatterings outside, but not many.
But you can get very good pizza. In fact, our pizza standards are probably as high as they can be. And so we know when you travel really anywhere in the country, understanding in the last 10 years, some places have developed their own penchant for higher end cuisine and higher pizza standards, but there's a reason Domino's and Pizza Hut and those places, dominated so much of the country for so long. Because pizza, I never order pizza in Florida because I think it's terrible no matter where I go. And so you're adding that in there from 1980. Yep. At least it's good to know it's been consistent. It was consistently bad then and is now. So, but since we kicked off in the resorts, why don't we stay there? I think we've got, I look around at my pile here. I know there's a couple things I want to talk about. Should we hit up the Polynesian first? That's one of Hal's favorite places. Yeah, I have a lot of stuff at the Polynesian too. So
cool.
One of the things in my collection is the last Tangaroa Terrace menu. And I'm curious who among us has actually eaten at the Tangaroa Terrace. We should tell people what it is.
So the Tangaroa Terrace was off at the Polynesian. It was off on the right-hand side. If you're standing looking at the Great Ceremony House, it was between, back then, the Maui and Pago Pago buildings. Right next to it was also the snack aisle.
And the laundromat's there, too. Isn't the laundromat?
The laundromat, yeah. There was a little arcade.
Arcade, yeah.
Yeah, Moana Mickey's Fun Time Arcade. Yeah. And it was kind of on a diagonal right to the center pool.
It's still there, by the way. We should mention it's still there. It's got is the Neverland Club in there now? The child care?
No, that's around the corner.
Okay, right.
It's primarily used now for cast member meeting things. So if you want to find out how your health insurance is going to be set up, or you need to get your flu shots, that's where you end up going.
Yeah, I have a few pictures of the inside of it currently.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. All right. Now, I ate there a number of my grandparents loved the Polynesian, so I have a lot of food memories from this resort. And I remember eating there. My grandmother loved the one of the signature breakfast dishes, which was
Tonga toast.
Tonga toast.
Tonga toast, right? The stuffed French toast, I guess you could call it. And they had bananas and stuff in it.
It still does. It's cinnamon. It's cinnamon sugar French toast with banana slices stuffed inside of a giant 3-inch thick slice of toast, and it's about 4 billion calories.
Yeah. So my grandmother would always get that, and she would also get a sweet leilani, which was a drink. I can't remember what was in it, but it was a non-alcoholic beverage. I think it was grapefruit juice or something. I don't remember. But sweet leilani.
I probably have a recipe for that somewhere.
All right, got to find that for me, please.
Did your grandma get insulin for dessert?
Grandma ate like a bird, so Grandma usually took 2 bites and then sent it over to Grandpa Joe and then to me to finish.
Yeah, so that restaurant was used off and on in the 90s. And I want to say, one of you can look it up, but sometime in the mid-90s during the last refurb of the restaurants in the Great Ceremonial House, they had it open as kind of a temporary dining location. And to my knowledge, that's the last time that it was open as a functioning restaurant. And I happen to have the very sparse menu that they served when the last time that it was in use. And it was the dinner menu from 5 to 10. And there is a total of 3 sandwiches and 3 entrees on the entire menu. And 1 appetizer sampler platter of spring rolls, chicken wings, and barbecue ribs, enough for 2, which they would have called a poo-poo platter inside.
Yeah.
But I'll give you the very short menu. The very short menu was a burger, a chicken sandwich, or a club sandwich called the Polynesian Club, which was a club sandwich that they just threw pineapple slaw on.
Polynesian.
And then on the entree side was sweet and sour passion chicken breast, shrimp and angel hair pasta, and filet mignon. And that was the very short. And desserts, chocolate mousse cake, tropical fruit cheesecake, and apple pie. So
and you wonder by that time, was it cooked up in the Great Ceremonial House and wheeled over in a little cart?
Yeah, more than likely. I mean, it. Like I said, that they haven't used that building in so long. The room.
No.
For guests.
Yeah, I got to wander through there. I think it was sometime in the early 2000s. I just opened up the door and went in, and it still had these incredibly elaborate, like, carved poles. That ran through the center of it. In fact, there's a picture in the Polynesian today over by as you go to walk down the hallway down to Captain Cook's. There's like some pictures of like bobolong boats and things.
Yeah.
And there's a picture of one of the sculptors working on it.
Oh, cool.
Which are cool. And there were also like 3 very large tikis that were done by by Oceanic Arts, and 2 of those ended up in Trader Sam's Grog Grotto today. So you can see a little piece of the Tangaroa Terrace still, and the tikis that were outside the Tangaroa Terrace are now outside on the Tiki Terrace. So
cool. Well, at least there's a little part still.
Yeah, and there is a video on YouTube inside the last time that they were using it for meals. And as I said, it's early 90s, and somebody's vacation video at the Polynesian. So I'll have to find it and click we'll include the link in the show notes because, you get to see, and obviously they hadn't done anything to it.
So moving along in the Polynesian, we get over to the Great Ceremonial House, as we mentioned, which had 2 restaurants. So, one, what is now Kona Cafe, was the Coral Isle Cafe. And I know, Brian, you have a photo that you love that your dad took from inside.
No, that was it is the only time I can ever recall that I paid for a single slide.
Oh, that's the slide you purchased.
That someone auctioned, because it was a photograph from inside the Coral Isle, now the Kona Cafe, looking out on the second level of the waterfall. So it's from inside the restaurant, which is just a very odd photo angle for anybody to have taken back then. And then just in the batch of there's a film that we have forthcoming, shot inside we have now footage outside of that restaurant looking in that we just acquired recently. So,
and the Coral Isle Cafe had a much lower ceiling. As now you go in there, Kona Cafe is very open, right? You can see across the Coral. You could see into the restaurant, but the ceilings were lower. It was a little more closed off.
Right, because back then they really wanted to trap the cigarette smoke right on top of you, so that you could you got it with every bite.
And then we'll move it with fans from the smoking to the non-smoking area. Now behind that, where Ohana's is now, was one of my absolute favorite restaurants growing up. There was the Pipit Bay Veranda. And why I remember this one so well is that, JT, you always like to make fun of the Gold Key plan that I was on once, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we went there on the first night. We were staying at the Polynesian. It was the whole family. And we all sat down and we're tired. And my grandfather says, get whatever you want. It's all included. So I think, with the exception of my grandmother and my young sister, everybody ordered filet mignon, and it was the most incredible filet that we had. It was like butter. It was just, and I have a lot of fond memories of eating dinner there with my grandparents and then turning around and watching the fireworks or going downstairs and watching. I had a great view of the castle, and I mean, it still does to this day, but I'm not one for the experience of Ohana, and
So I have a menu that I've just sent to you guys here from that restaurant when it was functioning. And you guys should note, on a lot of these, they don't have copyrights. This one has a copyright, but it's too difficult to see along the seam. so I can't make out the year. So a lot of times we have to guess based on the price of the foods. And my guess is based on the fact that most of the entrees are between $15 and $20. This was probably late in its incarnation before it became. Yeah, so I would have put this menu rather in the early '90s would be my guess. But it is interesting because they've given a lot of pedestrian dishes Hawaiian or Pacific sounding names. Where you, but it's very high. I don't want to say high end, but there's things like pheasant and a lot of stuff in like Pernod cream and things like that. That it's not.
Yeah, I guess because it's that particular place is part of French Polynesia. There was an awful lot of like French style things on the menu back then. Not so much Polynesian, but more of that colonialism type thing.
Right.
And I just sent you guys like a menu from '76, which is I wouldn't imagine going to a Polynesian restaurant and getting rock Cornish game hens as something that was
no, and I like how instead of it being pulled pork, they have Fiji pig and lobster. Like it's it's an attempt to dress up pork and lobster. But yeah. I do remember this chicken pago pago coming up very often when people reminisce about that restaurant as a famous dish there, which was it's like sweet and sour chicken. It's like a honey sesame chicken.
More fruit cocktail.
Fruit cocktail comes up a lot. Really, when you think about it, these were the three main restaurants at the Polynesian. That really was the premier restaurant at that location too. I mean, the Coral Cafe was a quick bite, so to speak, and Tango Terrace as well. So
there was also the South Seas room downstairs where the boutique is now. It was a fully functioning restaurant too, from what I can tell. A bit more intimate. It was sort of subdivided into like smaller rooms, with some of Raleigh Crump's tiki's from the Enchanted Gardens at Disneyland in there. I've yet to see any kind of menu or anything from it, but something was going on inside that place.
How I know you also have been a collector and tester of a lot of the drink recipes from the Polynesian cocktail menus back then, correct?
That is correct, yes.
So do you have anything to add on that, aside from the completely funky and awesome fonts that they used on some of them?
Yeah, the one thing that I had the most fun trying to figure out, and I'll put a link on this because I did sort of figure it out. There was this one oddball recipe that ended up in the bottom of a sheet that there was a story that Michael Crawford actually pulled out where he was going through a bunch of stuff, I think for Epcot for D23, and came across this like typewritten like on a typewriter menu, and he found these drawings that John Hench had done, where I guess Marty had gone to the Polynesian to order a drink and got this just like piece of typewriter paper with the drink menu on it and thought, we can do better than that. Sent it to John Hench, and then John Hench put together a drawing of what the drink menu could look like. And there was this one drink on there called an Orlando Sour, which only lived for like a year or two and never was heard of again through the Polynesian's menu changes. So I was able to sort of reverse engineer what I think that was, being based on Trader Vic's thing of doing a sour drink for each one of their restaurants. So when they were in Berlin, there's like a Berlin sour, there's a London sour. So I was able to do some research and figure out which kinds of lemons and limes and oranges were locally available in Orlando in the 1970s, and put together what I believe would be a fairly, hopefully, good version of what that drink might have been.
Well, what do you say we take a little walk over to the Floridian then, while we're on our little resort lagoon?
A monorail stop. We'll get board the monorail.
So, Brian, over at Grand Floridian, we take our monorail over. We had a couple different options back then. Narcoossee's, which is still there, was one of the restaurants. What is Citrico's was Flagler's, named after Henry Flagler, the Floridian hotel tycoon, I guess you could call him.
Right.
And you've got a children's menu of Flaglers, and I've got the adult menu.
Yeah, so why don't you talk about the adult menu? I do have a whole kids menu section at some point, but we can touch on it here. Absolutely.
Sure. So I've got this. This date's probably from 89, 90, I believe. My grandmother slid this into her purse on our way out. So what's interesting about the whole menu is that there's not a lot of interesting things on it. It's an Italian seafood fare. There's nothing that stands out as extraordinary. The seafood, everything but the sea scallops and sauteed shrimp, with leeks, nothing exciting, is all market price. So you didn't even know what you were paying. The pasta, fettuccine, gnocchi, linguine, spaghetti with pesto sauce. It's just, most of the pastas are $12, $13. And, the meats, there's only ossobuco and some filet of beef. So there's not a lot there to...
Oscobuco, though.
Yeah, they got that braised veal shanks with diced vegetables. So, but even the descriptions, I know we don't have a scan of this, but if I hold up the menu, the descriptions are extremely short. They don't provide much information about what's on the plate. And I just found it. I remember eating there and had really enjoyed it, but based on that, I wouldn't be excited to go back.
Well, I think it's probably important to note here a fact about food service at the resorts, which is that when we talked to Tom Nabby back in the day about the early years of the resort, and we've touched on this a few other episodes, that there was no established food service distributors or anything in Central Florida. There wasn't much of anything in Central Florida. So Disney built their own it was actually literally called Central Foods, to supply and prepare food for the theme parks and the resorts, which was built originally to service the Magic Kingdom and the 2 resorts that were there, and eventually 3 or 4 resorts that were there. By the time you got into the 1980s with Epcot opening, and then the big boom in building more and more resorts and developing the Lake Buena Vista area and into downtown Disney, at that point, obviously Central Florida had built up. So the first thing that they did was they privatized or outsourced to a third party, which was Aramark at the time, the employee food. All of the employee cafeteria food in the parks and on property was taken from Central Foods and moved over to Aramark. And the employees at the time really wax poetic about the food that was prepared at Central Foods and how good it was. And so that was not a change that they liked. And over the course of the coming years, eventually Central Foods was phased out entirely. So you've now got resorts and theme parks that have their own culinary departments that do some of the stuff on site, but a lot of it is outsourced to third parties. A lot of the preparation, a lot of the supplies it's all third party outsource distributors that bring that stuff in, and Disney doesn't do it on site anymore. So the reason I'm bringing that up now is you're seeing, just in looking at the menu from the Polynesian a few years earlier to now getting to the late 80s when that trend begins, you see the menus becoming a little more homogenous, a little less creative. Disney had a really poor reputation with food through the late 90s and a lot of the 2000s until they started to develop catering more to foodies, I guess.
Yeah, so when we get over to Epcot, I'm going to bring up a really interesting point that ties right into that around the time. So listen up a little bit later when I've got about 4 or 5 examples from Birnbaum's book where something very specific to food distribution is actually called out in it's a guidebook, and you would be surprised that they even bring this up in that function.
So bringing it back to Flaglers, I have the kids menu from the premiere of the resort. And if you remember when they opened the Grand Floridian, they shifted the title of Flagship Resort from the Contemporary, where it had been since the resort opened, over to the Grand Floridian, which now became their showpiece resort. So everything there was first class, top of the line, still is for the most part. But the kids menu at Flaglers was literally a full coloring book, and featuring Pinocchio, and it's Pinocchio and Geppetto actually taking the train to Flaglers to have dinner. and there's a you know how they have those book plates inside that will have a library will have a book plate inside the first page that says this book belongs to, and then it's the North Public Library, whatever. There's actually a book plate in this where it says this book belongs to, and you would write the name of the child, and I visited Flagler's on, and you would write the date in. And so
wow.
So it's like a 6-page coloring book or 8-page coloring book where you can color, and on the center fold, their waiter Antonio brings them their menus. What's your waiter's name? And you would write down the name of the waiter that was there, and it's a picture of Geppetto and Pinocchio sitting there, and the waiter coming to give them the menu, and the kid's menu is printed on the opposite page. So a 1988 child going to Flagler's with their parents could get a petite filet mignon with wild vegetables for $10.95. Half of a chicken breast with French fries for $8.95, a hamburger or cheeseburger with fries for $4.50. Didn't charge you extra for cheese. Or, and I'll bet this was delicious, you could create your own pizza with mozzarella cheese and tomato sauce, and a choice of pepperoni, ham, mushrooms, peppers, or onions, or spaghetti and meatballs, and your choice of beverages. So that was the child options for Flagler's and your coloring book with Geppetto and Pinocchio.
That was
Cool.
Does anybody remember the entertainment at Flagler's?
No, Todd, because we weren't on the Gold Key plan. We couldn't go there.
I'm sorry. We just went up there. No, there was a gentleman who came around. They had strolling musicians, and he would come around and sing Italian love songs to the tables and go. My grandparents got a kick out of it.
He was actually followed you around the whole trip on the Golden
Like Sir Robin and the Minstrels in
Excuse me,
Search
sir,
for
I'd
the
like
Holy
you to
Grail.
play some Clapton. Go ahead. That gets me in the mood for a
Play
boat
Freebird.
ride.
Play Freebird.
Well, speaking of music and entertainment, so let's move over to Narcoossee's. And the reason I bring that up is that I ate at Narcoossee's on our latest visit for the first time ever. It was good. I asked the waiter who had been there a number of years, I said, "That's interesting. What is that kind of platform up there?" And he said, "Oh, well, when this first opened, they played jazz in the evenings." And he said, "Now look up." And, you look up and it's nothing but just wood beams. And he said the acoustics were so awful that plan just completely fell by the wayside extremely, extremely quick. And before you know it, that the remnant of that tiered design where the band would be is still there. So, that's just kind of a little interesting tidbit about Narcoossee's there. Now, I think we just recently got in one of the menus we got in was Narcoossee's, correct?
Yeah, that email we got was...
All right, so this looks like Narcoossee's from 1988. And let's see, we've got fried soft shell turtle with lemon.
Oh,
What?
How does that... Do you have that often
fried
down
turtle?
that way?
An actual turtle?
It says fried soft shell turtle with lemon, yeah.
Oh.
Maine lobster, seafood stew, blackened gator steak. So you could actually get gator. Veal chop, lamb chop.
Turtle is a part of Philadelphia cuisine from history. So we have snapper soup here, which is made from the snapping turtle. It was not an odd thing to see on a menu, terrapin, whatever it's called, on classic menus at the turn of the century, which is what the Grand Floridian is modeled after. So that's not such an odd menu item for what they were going for at the time. I've never heard of fried soft shell turtle, though.
Yeah, and the blackened gator steak, I mean, that sounds Creole to me. I will take the one order of the 3 citrus cobbler with whiskey sauce. I'm all over that.
That sounds acceptable.
Yeah. They've got
All I can remember from these restaurants is every time I rode the monorail, they pitched the hell out of Narcoossee's.
Yeah.
join us at
Flagler's.
Narcoossee's.
Yeah, I think they still do. It's like, don't forget, it's out there in the water. You can't see it.
I mean,
Where is it actually at? I've never even been near it.
It's by the boat dock. It's by the Grand Floridian's boat
Oh,
dock.
okay.
Yeah.
7 Seas 7 Scoop Spectacular. I like the tie-ins with the area. That's pretty cool.
All right, so let's jump on the monorail and head over to the Contemporary, which has its own share of dining and entertainment. Now, I have in front of me here, this is from 1983. This is the Contemporary Resort room service menu. And it was funny, I'm in bed last night. My wife's watching TV, and I've got all these menus and different things. And I said to her,
You hungry, honey?
"Oh, look, Yeah, you hungry? And she goes, she says, get me a Jell-O mold. After I held this up, I said, hold on, let me check. So I flipped through all day dining, sandwiches, dinner, desserts, fruited Jell-O, $1.45. There it is.
I love fruited Jell-O.
There it is. So most of the stuff in here, their all-day dining is not all day. It actually has an end to it, so it's not 24 hours. But the sandwiches, turkey bacon club, tuna salad. They had Rubens. Dinner had the Italian spaghetti, as if you generally don't order a Turkish spaghetti or Brazilian spaghetti. But New York sirloin. The only thing in here that really tied in to the actual location was a sandwich called the Monorail. And this was a open-faced array of ham, breast of turkey, Swiss cheese, and tomato on a dark rye bread with Thousand Island dressing for $5.50.
I have the room service menu from the year before. Mine is from '82. So
Okay.
I have some of those same things that you're looking at, including the monorail, which I liked, but and was going to mention. But you on the salad menu, I don't know if you've seen it or not, the sunburst salad. So
there it
it's
is.
probably a good asterisk to add here. Back when the resort opened, they had that contract for really 15 years with the Florida Citrus Commission. That's why the Orange Bird was there. And in Michael Crawford's book, The Progress City Primer, there is a whole chapter on how they made efforts to incorporate Florida citrus onto the menus throughout the resort. So not just in the theme park, not just at Sunshine Tree Terrace, but in the hotels and in some of the other restaurants on site, and eventually in Lake Buena Vista Village, there was an effort to add Florida citrus elements to the menus. So on this one, there's the Sunburst salad, which is Florida orange and grapefruit sections with strawberries, melon, and cottage cheese on romaine lettuce with brown bread and cream cheese.
Oh, sounds good.
Yeah. Now, do you have the Grand Canyon chef salad on that one? Right below it?
I do.
Yes.
That is
There's
right
nothing
below.
special about that salad other than it's called the
Well,
Grand Canyon.
My favorite thing,
grand.
my favorite thing about this menu is it also has where you can have cocktail parties in your rooms, like order up cocktails by the pitcher for between $8 and $12 delivered to your room, or if you're just a really big alcoholic. But on top of that, they
Pitcher for one.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, this is Mr. Miles alone up on the 14th floor. Could you please send up a pitcher of Mai Tais, please? And so above it they have cocktail snacks, and so you could order like a tray of shrimp. Like you could have an iced Gulf shrimp bowl, 24 shrimp with cocktail sauce for $15.90.
Oh, so the year after it went down to 12 for $11.75. Look at that.
No, well, for A, the price went up, and B, look at that. I mean, they must not have been
Halved.
selling too many double dozens. They also had the crab. Does yours have the crab meat Royal Street on there?
No, I only have the gourmet cheese tray and some crackers.
The crab meat Royal Street was per dozen. They were stuffed mushrooms stuffed with crab meat and cheese.
Well, seafood was on its way out apparently in 1983. So
God, I'm just comparing the last two in my mind. It seems like the Grand Flow was very like, have your turtle soup and your different. Then you go to the Contemporary. It's like, hey, I got a party. Send something for everybody. Pictures and appetizers. Send it all.
It was a convention hotel.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
that's the
it's
difference,
like
right?
after hours,
Right.
like, let's party in my room. I got a plate of fried mushrooms coming up and a pitcher of booze.
and that's why you had Top of the World and Pueblo Room
Yeah.
and the Gulf Coast Room. So I should probably mention those. I don't know. I don't remember much about the Gulf Coast Room or the Pueblo Room. I do know about Top of the World, so I don't know where we want to stop next.
The only thing I want to mention is there in our research of the 1970s stuff that the employee cafeteria at the bottom of the Contemporary Resort is called the bottom of the
bottom
world.
of the world.
Or at least that's how they referred to it.
That's awesome.
So Brian, you went to Top of the World, right?
We had our brunch. The only brunch I ever had in the 1980s that I remember was when we were on vacation at Disney World, and we had our Sunday morning breakfast or brunch. at the top of the world, and it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. I mean, I grew up in a house where there were 7 of us, 5 kids. So you had to fight if there was a box of Cheerios in the house. You had to fight to get a bowl before it was gone. So to be taken to this place where there were 6 different kinds of eggs and prime rib at breakfast and a whole ham being carved and just trays and trays of fresh made waffles and stuff. For a for a fat kid that was just yearning to be able to eat everything, I was like, it was like heaven. Like that scene in National Lampoon's European Vacation where they're putting all the food in front of Audrey. That was me at the top of the world brunch that I remember. Like it was I'd never seen anything like it in my life.
So you didn't focus on the architecture and the view. He just
it was the waffles. Like you mean I can put as much syrup as I want on this and my parents aren't going to yell at me? Like, let me just keep pouring the syrup on.
So nightly at 6 and 9:15 p.m. they would put on the Top of the World Broadway review show, which was I went to it. It's not in my wheelhouse. Let's put it that way.
You would have preferred the Sherry Lewis and Lamb Chop.
Yeah, maybe.
Or that rock band that was performing at the Magic of Walt Disney World film that we restored at the end.
They were singing 3 Dogs a Night, Joy to the World. So
yes.
So
tambourine.
when we'll do a dinner show thing, we could talk a little bit more about it because dive in a little more. So
that's the episode everybody's waiting for.
Yeah, exactly.
The dinner show episode.
That's why I said maybe. So before we take a boat over to Fort Wilderness, I should have let you know I've got the American Express Presents Walt Disney World Dining and Shopping Guide from 1994, 1995. Do you guys remember these?
Yeah.
These were great because I remember carrying one of these around, and my grandparents would
the
say,
white glove one.
Yeah,
I had that.
Yeah. Okay, so Todd, did you get the fanny pack that had that logo on it?
I did, and I wore it for 2 vacations.
He liked that.
I was like in middle school when that came out. I go, this is awesome.
Yep. Now, the best part is that they had the direct dial phone numbers of all the restaurants in here. So, like the Yacht Club Gallery is 934-3355. And if you want to call the Yachtsman Steakhouse, it's 934-3356. So, this isn't the days of, just calling up or even just walking in. And I remember flipping through this and going to my, family or grandparents or whatever. Oh, let's eat here. It's right nearby. Okay. And you'd walk in. So, but JT, you need to talk about one of your favorite places. We're going to need to take a little boat over to Roy's cabin and check out.
Yes. All right. This one I actually snagged. Fort Wilderness. I mean, there's not much there as far as dining, but Crockett's Tavern was always the one. Have either of you guys ever been there?
I have been there.
Okay. And what's cool is on the menu that I have, this from 92, a little bit out of our wheel well, but close enough. The one thing, and they don't do this as far as I know, that on the menu they describe all the random artifacts in the restaurant. So, like, they tell you about the big birch bark canoe that's above you when you're eating, like descriptions. So it kind of gives you something to do if you're waiting on your food. I did kind of go through this, though, and look, and the thing that stuck out to me were the tavern drinks from the Tennessee Hills.
Oh, right.
So
some hooch.
Yeah. Yes, and one of them named, and I'm curious, this is a little quiz, one of them was called the Gully Wumper. What do we got? Tell me where it's from.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that was Mike Fink's boat, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Which also existed as the attraction over at
You're right.
the Magic
Yep.
Kingdom.
Cranberry and orange juices, peach schnapps, and vodka.
I don't think Mike Fink was drinking that. That's just a guess.
Various things: Crockett's Hickory Smoked Prime Rib, Texas T-Bone, Georgie Russell's Bourbon Tenderloin.
Oh,
lots of Southern fare. We'll say the Blazing Buffalo Wings.
Was this in the tavern? You're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
but it was more of a restaurant. I mean, it feels, I don't know, it depended on the era. We went one year and it was a very standard sit-down restaurant menus, and then they turned to more bar food, just go to the bar, place your order. Now it's kind of back to a menu type place, so it's changed over the years. Just gone back and forth, but pretty solid menu as far as, what they have to offer. The Kentucky homemade sausage, cheese, and fruit platter was a hit.
Absolutely.
For sure. And the Raging Cajun shrimp cocktail. So, Crockett's Tavern at the Fort. Definitely one of my favorites.
So we're going to hop aboard the boat and take it over to the Magic Kingdom and walk down Main Street, USA. But starting off on the right-hand side of what was originally the Gulf Hospitality House. You guys remember when it was called that?
I do.
Yeah. My grandmother always referred to it as the Hospitality House. No matter what it said out front, it was the Hospitality House. But the restaurant in there has been through a lot of different changes over the years, and I've got quite a few menus from it. Do you guys remember how they would... I don't know if they still do this, but the menu was always set up like a newspaper. See here, you've got the Main Street Gazette, and there's all these fancy articles on it about Tony's winning an award, and then they've got the menu on the side. But this other one dates from the Hormel days, because Hormel was a sponsor in there at one time. This is 1987, the Town Square Times. And this one actually opens up with a giant menu in the center. Quite large. So
was what is now Tony's Town Square Cafe considered part of the hospitality house at that point? Because I only knew the hospitality house is like you'd go in and get some, maps and information and stuff.
Yeah. Well, what's always interesting about that is the hospitality house sign is centered over the entrance to both. And I don't know. I always kind of group them together and
the remainder of what was the hospitality house area where they had the large reception desk kind of thing, and it had a beautiful map of the resort property behind it that actually is captured in a couple of slides that I have and have recently tweeted. But that is the remainder of that space is the Tony's reception area now, where you go in and wait and check in for your table. And then parts of the restaurant, because they cut it up and they added shops, down at the end of Town Square, and so they cannibalized part of that space, didn't they?
Yeah, and that's actually where you meet for tours now and everything. So yeah, it's a lot different. And
meet Mickey and the Mickey meet and all is back there.
Right, he's in the back.
You used to have a Disneyana shop in there for a little while.
Yeah. So this bill of fare this is the Hormel days, so this is about 1987, and we're going to roll back in time a little bit after this. But I found this interesting that it basically, if you don't like smoked meats, don't eat here. Because it's barbecued shrimp, chili, barbecued chicken, smoked beef, smoked pork. There is a T-bone, but then there's ribs, and then you got combinations of everything. And then the really odd thing, Hormel is known for their smoked meats and things. And it says here, farm fresh catfish from Hormel. It's like, since when did they get into the farm, catfish business? There's a burger and a seafood and chicken plate for those. But, before Hormel was there, we had Oscar Mayer was the sponsor of that restaurant. And an episode on food would not be complete if we didn't mention Little Oscar. So who of you met Little Oscar?
Not me.
Not me.
Come on, Hal.
Not I.
You didn't meet him?
No.
They didn't eat in the parks. They just had pie.
That's true. They just had
we
pie.
Ate, yeah. We ate only a select few places, which I would be more than happy to share at the appropriate time.
Okay, they haven't come up yet, but we're counting on you to
we're running out of places here.
We were never allowed to actually sit down and eat a meal in the
For those of you who don't know, and I did get to meet Little Oscar. I remember him coming over to the table at one point. So Little Oscar was a little person by the name of George Molchan. I think there were a number of them over the years. He relocated to Orlando specifically for that job, and he was there from the mid-'70s, and he retired in 1987. So it's interesting how that times with this Hormel ad. Did Hormel take over Oscar Mayer? I don't know, but because this is 87. But so he would greet at the table. He was a little person. He had a chef hat all dressed in white with Oscar Mayer logo on it, and he would hand out plastic rings of little wieners, right? There were little hot dog rings that he would hand out. I didn't get one. Was it you, JT, who found the photos of the rings?
No, I think it was Brian, wasn't it?
We actually got an email or a tweet from one of our listeners who said, "You guys better talk about the wiener rings." And I said, the wiener whistles. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he actually sent us some of them that are for sale on eBay that apparently Oscar used to hand out these little, they're like Cracker Jack prizes.
Yep.
No kidding.
So George passed away in April of 2005, and I think it's kind of neat that Oscar Mayer did send one of the Wienermobiles to the cemetery, and during his ceremony, they sang, "Oh, I wish I were an Oscar Mayer wiener," and then followed it with a wiener whistle toots of tribute, as they call it.
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
Presumably, he filled that role throughout the Oscar Mayer years, which was from when the park opened until the early 80s, and most of those contracts were 10 years. And then Hormel stepped in and took over as the sponsor. And so I have put before you guys in the notes here and just tweeted out the 2 breakfast menus side by side. You can see there was not much of a change in terms of what was offered between the 2 sponsors. The menu is virtually identical. Right down to like Waffle Saratoga keeping its name, and
the font even stayed the same.
Yeah, the font, the colors, a little bit of the design of the menu change, and of course the prices went up. The interesting thing to me is the food prices do not change that dramatically, but look at the bottom at the drink prices that skyrocket.
Net tripled.
Oh yeah, which is just interesting that the food prices, went up, what you would expect, probably inflation over those 6 or 7 years. But at the bottom, a thing like a cup of coffee went from 35 cents to 75 cents, and same thing with tea and hot chocolate and stuff. So maybe they suddenly realized that they were undercharging for their drinks, and they could really start to gouge people on their hot beverages in the morning. And then Starbucks turned it into a national phenomenon.
Thanks, Tony's Town Square.
Yeah. I have the 1976 bicentennial menu for the Liberty Tree Tavern, and that's kind of interesting because one of the conversations on the ex-cast member boards is that there was a period of time where this English walnut bread at the Liberty Tree Tavern was famous. Like, it was, people would just come from all over to eat there to be able to get the bread because it was so good, and apparently they would even sell extra loaves out of there. And I can't really imagine going anywhere today and buying a loaf of bread from my Disney World restaurant, but there are a couple that I would like to be able to do that from. But so back in 1976, it was an interesting menu because they went with the whole colonial thing. There were 2 interesting things on here. One is Philadelphia pepper pot soup, which for those of you not from Philadelphia and don't know what it is, pepper pot soup is a soup that the meat in it is tripe, or tripe as the Italians call it. And if you've never seen tripe, it is pretty gross looking because it's the lining of the intestines of a cow, I believe. And they turn it into a soup, which I've eaten on many occasions and is quite delicious, as long as you don't think about what you're eating. But there are chilled specialties. You could get chilled roast beef or a bouquet of seasonal fruit. But in the entrees, there was Pennsylvania pot roast. But in the spirit of 76, the bicentennial special, there was also Pennsylvania pot roast, except it included dessert and coffee. And instead of being $3.25, it was $3.95. So to celebrate the bicentennial, they added in dessert and coffee for an extra 60 cents.
Not a bad deal.
No. And you had steak Monticello, which was you ready for this? Chopped sirloin steak topped with a sauce of cheddar cheese and white wine with bacon crisps, vegetable, and potatoes. And seafood Chesapeake, which was a puff pastry filled with pieces of shrimp, scallops, and crab, and a light cream sauce with burgundy and vegetables. So it sounds delicious. And the kids menu, I always have to mention the kids menu, fried chicken or pot roast.
So I have an interesting anecdote here from Adventureland at the Adventureland veranda. This is Birnbaum saying this. He says, note that waiting lines here usually take about 5 minutes longer than those of Simulands and other fast food establishments. Because, any guesses? Of the greater number of choices. So I guess back in 1986, it was hard to choose
Well, I probably have a menu that is from about that era. Mm-hmm. So here's what you could have gotten: the Polynesian burger, which I understand was very popular. It was, I think, a teriyaki burger.
Yeah, it had like a pineapple soy glaze on it. That's a pineapple soy teriyaki type of thing. That the the recipe is circulating for that glaze.
No, that's because this restaurant was sponsored by Kiko Man, right?
Right.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Then the teriyaki chicken sandwich, a shrimp fried rice with egg roll, which is Brian's favorite, I'm sure.
You could get 2 egg rolls as a side order at that place, Hal. So it would have been my favorite restaurant.
The sweet and sour chicken. What I always ate when I went there, the stir fry beef and broccoli, which was my first introduction to that. A lo mein salad, a South Seas fruit salad. Again, the fruit salad. Man, people went for that. And for the kids, the young adventurers, chicken nuggets, hot dog basket, and a soft drink. And of course, you could get French fries or the 2 egg rolls for $2.94.
And so people know how the Adventureland veranda then was just as you cross the bridge into Adventureland on your right, where the Skipper Canteen and stroller parking is now, except it was like an open air quick service, right?
No, this was the actual. What is now the canteen was the Adventureland veranda. So you would where you walk into the canteen now. That entrance was actually like a side, just more seating.
Okay.
And the main dining room, where the fake doors are up above that have like the names of like Harper Goth and people on it. Underneath that was the counter where it was a counter service restaurant. So that's where you would stand in line, order your food, pick it up at the window behind, and then take it out to one of the many tables spread out all over.
So I've seen pictures of people sitting at the tables there, right where the swan boats would pass by.
Yes.
Was that open air, or were that closed and air conditioned?
So there were 2 actual open air verandas, which was a lovely place to sit. That you could take your food outside and sit outside and watch the swan boats.
That's why I asked, because I've seen pictures of it in use, but never quite got it. But it looked like a beautiful place to have a meal.
Oh, it was really nice. Todd, I think you have something you want to...
Yeah, Birnbaum really didn't like this, because I'm reading through here. He says, cornstarch is heavily used, and the chefs occasionally stir-fry the vegetables into sogginess.
Yeah, I mean, but in an environment that was otherwise just hamburgers and hot dogs everywhere... It was a different choice. Yep. And there was, that was a rare thing.
Exactly.
And an affordable rare choice too. It's not like, it wasn't a $20 entree. It was, the beef and broccoli was like $4.54 or something. So it was a good deal. $4.84.
So let's jump off the veranda onto one of those passing swan boats and take it right over to Cinderella's castle. Now, what do they call it now that's upstairs? What is it? Cinderella's Royal Table, right?
Cinderella's Royal Table.
Right. So back then it was King Stephen's Banquet Hall. And do we ever know why in Cinderella's castle it's King Stephen who is from Sleeping Beauty?
I think I may have talked about this.
Did we mention it before? Maybe we did.
But for the benefit of those who may not have heard it, or if we did not do it, to the best from what I can figure out, it was an actual mistake. It was a pure and simple, complete screw up. Because a lot of people, I've read these theories of like, oh, well, in a castle, it's like they would name one dining area after the king of like a kingdom that was next door. But what we discovered is that in the early nomenclature booklet, that the candy shop also said something about like by the royal order of King Stephen. So it was a complete screw up.
Okay.
They just picked the wrong name with that.
So those were the days when you could eat upstairs with King Stephen, right? And I ate up there once. I remember the glass mug was the famous takeaway from that. You guys remember that?
You gave one away.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, that's right. We gave one away about a year and a half ago or so.
Well, and the famous thing about that restaurant, which no doubt your Birnbaum's Guide covers, is until recent years, the reputation was always that the food was barely edible in that restaurant for most of the years that it existed.
what we've got a couple others to cover, right? Right, Brian?
Well, there are two we should note. The first is the Aunt Polly's on Tom Sawyer Island, which for a time, and this wistful people like 90s kids remember this, for a time it sold cold fried chicken. So you could go and get like a box lunch of cold fried chicken from Aunt Polly's or ham and cheese sandwiches. So back then, when Magic Kingdom was really crowded, or you happened to be over there, you could plan your lunch. And Tom Sawyer Island has a variety of picnic tables throughout it. So it was a really nice place to kind of go over and grab a bite to eat. And it has sold various food items over the years. I mean, the menu there has always changed. Now, when on the rare occasions that it's been open, it just usually sells like chips and cookies and stuff. Because obviously all the food over there, they have to boat it over.
I used to get like a dill pickle like out of a jar over there as a snack.
And right across the river from Aunt Polly's, we cannot forget to mention the Diamond Horseshoe, which for so long was closed and is now open again, serving full meals from the same kitchen as Liberty Tree Tavern, because they share a kitchen. But back in the 70s, it had a menu. It had a lunch menu, and I happen to have it here in front of me. And it was not extensive, but they offered snacks. You could get Ruffles or Fritos, brownies, chocolate chip cookies, a dessert cup, whatever that is, it's a dessert cup of strawberry shortcake, Boston cream pie, or coconut cream pie. So unless Hal remembers, I'm just going to assume these were like those KFC little bucket parfaits you used to be able to get.
Yeah, we always ordered the little sandwiches and the chips there. That was one of my favorite shows. That was, at the time, it's like, I think I probably have said this before, it's like people would make a beeline to, initially it's like you would go get your reservation in the morning, and there was little cards that they would hand out saying you had like reservations for a table of 4 at 2 o'clock. You would go as quickly as you could to the front of the Diamond Horseshoe in order to pick up that, and then later on they switched it to a location on Main Street where you would get that. So that time I like ran over to the front of the Diamond Horseshoe and then went back to Main Street in order to get in line for that.
So there were 3 sandwich options on this menu. They were the Pecos Bill, which was ham, salami, pastrami, and cheddar cheese on whole wheat bread. The Diamond Jim, which was shaved turkey breast on white bread, and the Slewfoot Sue, which was smoked ham and American cheese on white bread. All sandwiches served with a choice of Ruffles or Fritos. If you remember, Frito-Lay sponsored a lot of stuff in the kingdom back then. But this was also the location where both Pepsi and Coke sponsored it, if you remember. So you could get a can punch, which was non-carbonated, which was a fruit punch. But the soda options there were Coca-Cola, Diet Pepsi, Sprite, and regular Pepsi. So you could get Coke or Pepsi there.
This is like the demilitarized zone of
Diet Coke.
Magic Kingdom restaurants. That didn't exist.
It didn't exist yet. Diet Pepsi was out in the market before Diet Coke was.
Good look at that. Gosh.
One of the few places we did actually get to go eat in the Bowers household, and we ate there a lot, I think because my mom had a thing for chicken, was the Columbia Harbor House. Which still exists and now is known for, I think it's bread bowls or did they get rid of the bread bowl with the clam chowder in it, or is it still there? I think there was.
I think it might still be
there.
there.
A lobster roll last time.
Yeah, cool.
I don't know how because we don't cover current events at the parks. We only talk about
that's right.
things you could eat 30 years ago.
Very useful.
But back in the 1980s, I think what it was probably mostly known for. It was one of the few places that had like chicken fingers, because that was a relatively new thing. And what always got us was it came on this gigantic pile of French fries, like as big as your head. You would get like 5 or 6 huge pieces of chicken, and then all this incredible amount of French fries that you could never eat like in your lifetime, like on top of that too.
So how was that, like a meal for one technically, or was that like a twofer?
That was a one.
So
person.
you went there, you could get like 2 or 3 of those, and the whole family was set.
Oh my God, yeah. So I want to say probably by by the 90s, they might have changed like service providers, and then it got cut down to like a very normal amount of fries.
Sure.
But
There is something else notable about the Columbia Harbor House, which is it was one of the locations on property when Disney World opened that you could get the famous Monte Cristo of Disneyland's Blue Bayou. They did copy some of their most popular offerings from Disneyland at Walt Disney World, and it opened. And they sold that Monte Cristo into the 80s before they stopped. Well, really, when they did away with Central Foods, they stopped selling it there. But if those of you who don't know, there's a famous like 4 billion calorie Monte Cristo that they sell in Disneyland, which comes with this raspberry sauce and powdered sugar on it. And I don't know how anyone eats a whole one, but people do it.
I love them.
So the Harbor House was one of like 4 locations. There was one in downtown Disney. There was there was another location in the Magic Kingdom that had it, one of the sit-down restaurants. But the reason I also bring it up is the cast member chats. That was one of the items that they could get very cheap in the cast cafeteria. They could get the Monte Cristos for like $1.50 or something. So
fantastic.
Yeah, so that's why a lot of them, I guess, are dying off now, because they lived on a steady diet of Monte Cristos in the 70s.
One of the other cool things about the Harbor House is it's one of the few restaurants there's actually a second kitchen upstairs. So on those rare days when the upstairs and the downstairs are simultaneously running, you can actually go upstairs and order from the counter up there, and usually get through it a lot faster.
Yeah. I've yet to see that happen up there. I guess I'm always up there. I'm always there when it's closed. And now, isn't each area is I believe is named and themed after one of the original 13 colonies too? I believe each of the different rooms.
Yeah, I think I can't remember. I know
like
Foxy Hooves did a breakdown of that, but
yeah, something of that nature. All right. Well, I think that wraps up the Magic Kingdom. So let's take the express monorail and then head on over to Epcot. And,
we should add an asterisk there. It wraps up the Magic Kingdom for now, because we know we'll hear from you about places we didn't talk about that you miss, like Gergie's, whatever it is, that became Mrs. Potts Cupboard, but for years carried the name of Gergie from the Black Cauldron. So
yes, and the Lancers Inn and Tomorrowland Terrace and those places.
We've got a little something to do towards the end of here that we might hit on some of those, so we'll save that to the end. But so let's land ourselves in Epcot here. Future World. First couple that come to mind is the Sunrise Terrace Restaurant and the Good Turn and the Stargate. And anybody remember any of those? And
yes, all of those. Because it's more recent.
That's right.
Sunrise Terrace was actually an Italian restaurant, which was kind of surprising. So it was mostly spaghetti and lasagna, and seemed like a little bit heavy for our tastes, and so I think we did do too much there.
But that was later on in the earlier years. It was actually fried cod, shrimp, and chicken.
Oh God!
Yeah. So if you ever want some sort of heavy thing,
you're like, where can I get some fried cod and some futurism?
Well, so what's interesting is that what's called out in here is that the food is not conventional. Frozen pre-bedded fare. It's freshly battered, dipped instead. Now keep on that theme here, because I'm going to hit on it a couple times, which goes back to this whole central food thing that Brian was talking about. So that was novel for, they weren't dumping your bags of frozen tenders into the fryer and just serving.
Well, and that was a quick. Was that a sit down, right?
Yeah, and they actually
was a quick serve.
It was I think it's under fast food and snack spots and. But what is interesting, they did serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so it was going all day.
I'll tell you, it really, for the breakfast thing, that little terrace that was outside actually really was a pleasant place to sit. The way it was surrounded by the water and stuff before it sort of got like reworked into the electric umbrella, it was actually like a lovely little spot.
Let's see. Now the Odyssey. Why don't we? I've got somebody who worked over the Odyssey, so let's a friend of mine. Let's give him a call. Hello, Steve. You on the line?
I am. Hello.
Hey, Steve. Welcome to the show. How are you tonight?
I'm well. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. So you and I, we've gone out to dinner as friends, and a couple of times we've spoken, and I didn't even know that you worked down at Disney World at any time. And then I think I mentioned something about the podcast and Odyssey, and you said, Odyssey, I worked there. So why don't you tell the listeners, Odyssey, as many of our listeners know, and has become really, it's been deserted over the years, and there's not much left of it now. They use it for different functions, and people have always said we want to open up. It's in a very unique location, and but there's little information about what went on inside, and a lot of people don't remember what was served and what was going on there. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about behind the doors and behind the scenes there at the Odyssey, and when you worked there and everything.
Sure. So yeah, what was served there was pretty easy. It was burgers, hot dogs, fries, sodas. It was really a lunch stopover between the sort of the Future World area of Epcot and then getting out into the World Showcase area over in Epcot. It was it was geniusly positioned by the folks at Disney. You really had only two ways you could transfer over, and one of them was essentially passed almost through the Odyssey restaurant, and no matter what folks did, whether they ran back to the sort of the World Showcase first, or whether they, like most people would do, sort of go through the Future World area, you almost invariably ended up at the Odyssey around lunchtime, whether you're going sort of backwards through the park or forwards through the park. So that midday period certainly felt like about half the park was in the Odyssey restaurant at the time.
It's still used quite a bit too as a pass through. I know I've used it and go around. Now most people just duck their heads in and use the bathrooms.
You could never keep up with the volume, really.
Really?
It was always amazing. Yeah, it was. Like, for example, we had this bank of deep fryers. It was probably 14 of them. If you sat there running fries, you could run all 14 sets of fryers at the same time. And as soon as you'd start dropping fries, basically two big baskets you drop with a bag of fries, and then you put them into the oil and you start working your way down to number 14. By the time you got fries dropped at 14, you had to run all the way back up the line again and start pulling the fries, number 1, number 2, number 3. They couldn't keep up.
Wow.
You couldn't fry French fries fast enough in that joint. It was absolutely it was just absolutely crazy.
What years did you work there?
I worked there in 90, about 1990. I figured I'd get a job at a restaurant, and I really thought I was getting some more of a white tablecloth restaurant. When I went in there, it was a lot of fun, but it was nothing I'd ever experienced before. I'd never worked in a more of a fast food environment. You were talking about the tomatoes.
Yeah. Tell our listeners about the tomato story.
Yeah, it was another good example of how the volume of business that was going through there. They sat me down one day and said, okay, well, we need to start slicing these tomatoes. We have to fill these hotel pans. Hotel pans, it's pretty common in the restaurant industry. I'd say it's probably, I don't know, a foot wide by about 2.5 feet long. And you'd run a tomato through a banjo slicer, so it would actually slice the entire tomato in one push. So you'd start cranking through tomatoes until you filled the hotel pan. And I started filling hotel pans until I said, okay, I think I'm done filling this hotel pan. He's like, oh no, you're not done. You're never done. You're gonna sit here all day and slice tomatoes. And I did just that. I felt like I was in the military. You couldn't keep the sliced tomatoes on the bar fast enough. That was just what people were throwing on their burgers. It was the most incredible amounts of volume. You think, okay, I'm done, right?
Right.
All day long, just like the fries.
Well, years ago, people would also sneak up and make free sandwiches by ordering, a slice of toast, and then they go over to the condiments bar and grab the lettuce and the tomato, and so you may have been slicing for freeloaders too. We don't know.
I very well could. I think you pretty much could actually make yourself an entire salad just off of the sort of the condiments bar, if you will.
Yeah.
Between the lettuce, the and the onions, and the pickles, and the tomatoes. I think you could make an entire salad off of that.
Right. Brian, what year did the Odyssey officially close?
I will certainly say by 98, when I was started to go regularly. I don't remember it being open. We'll get some listener who says, no, it closed on, January 22nd, 2010, but I don't remember it being open by the late 90s.
July of 94.
Yeah. I'm showing there.
All right. Well,
Now, Steve-
and if you remember that whole stretch from Horizons to World of Motion to Odyssey was like the old abandoned amusement park from Scooby-Doo.
Right.
Like it was just like you know, there was like everything's falling apart and closed and they're knocking stuff down and
That's right. That's right.
Were they still doing the character meals when you were working there?
I think they were, yeah. Yeah,
they did that.
The hotels and things. They used to do those types of things.
Well, Steve, we're going to get you an honorary tomato sticker. I think we'll send down to you. Maybe Hal will make just like a T-shirt that just says "I sliced tomatoes at the Odyssey."
Oh, man.
Yeah,
By the
we need an
dollar,
Odyssey
tomato,
T-shirt
I
for
suppose
sure.
That dude was retired by now.
Yeah, tomatoes and burgers and fries. Well, Steve, I appreciate you coming on. Like I said, you're one of the only people that we've ever talked to who has, or the only person so far who has worked at the Odyssey. So appreciate your time coming on the show. And
Oh, no, my pleasure. I'd love to. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Steve.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks.
ya.
Bye. Now the other one in Future World, which was this is again kind of a snack place, but they serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Was the Stargate restaurant. And they had Danish pastries and fruit cups, and but apparently the specialty there was the Stellar Scramble. Does anybody remember the Stellar Scramble?
Can't say that I do.
Cheese, ham, onions, green pepper, and scrambled eggs as a breakfast pizza. So
Oh yeah, the breakfast pizza. I do remember having that.
yeah, that's what it was called. So, and that stayed until the park closed. It was open quite a bit. But yeah, I remember that. Which one of those became the electric umbrella? Which one was that?
The Stargate became the Electric Umbrella, and the Sunrise Terrace became the Fountain View,
Fountain View Restaurant, there
which
we
is
go.
now the Starbucks.
Well, let's take a walk over to the land. Brian, you've got one that's near and dear to your heart, and I remember eating at the other one in there. So we've touched on the farmers market before, but let's refresh a couple of our listeners and talk about one of your favorite items from there too.
Well, if you go back to the Living with the Land episode, we talked about the farmers market, which to this day is a popular food court location for casual dining in the parks, and was one of the locations on the property that you could get the infamous handwich. So I won't regale you with more tales of the handwich because you can go back and listen to that episode. But we did also mention that upstairs was the rotating restaurant, which when the park opened was the Good Turn, and then a few years later became the Land Grill Room, until about 10 years ago when it became the Garden Grill Restaurant. So I have the menu from the Land Grill Room from the late 80s, and there are a couple of interesting things on it, and one of them is the inside jacket cover. Was they called it a celebration of America's cuisine, and noted that many menu selections feature products grown in our land greenhouses, fresh herbs, vegetables. Those are herbs for your United Kingdom listeners, and even some of our fish are raised here in controlled environments. And they note that there are healthy choices on the menu as well. It's a very interesting menu because remember at that point it was it Kraft, right? Was it Kraft that was doing it back then? Or yeah, it was Kraft originally,
Yes.
and then Nestle.
Yeah.
So there is occasionally, like they throw in that something is served with Kraft dressing or Kraft sauce or things like that. But a very pedestrian menu. Nothing like crazy on there. It's just standard shrimp, chicken. I guess you had to go for the breakfast pizza across the way if you wanted that. But for a starter, you could get spicy chicken wings and drumettes. I don't know what drumettes are, but that must have been.
Drumettes are the part of there. So there's two style of wings. There's like the wingy wing, and then there's the part that looks like a little.
The wingy wing is
drum.
that a
That's
poultry
the drumette.
term? The wingy?
Yes, that's. Yeah, there's the actual wing part, and then there's the part that looks like a tiny.
That looks like
little
a
drum.
tiny little
Like a
chicken
buffalo
wing.
wing?
Tiny
So those
drumstick,
are the,
exactly.
Yeah, so we always just called them, like, nowadays, up here, I don't know if it's this way in the rest of the country, but if I go in to order buffalo wings here, I can tell them I want all drumsticks, which means that I guess these drumettes, that you can tell them, because I don't like that other piece, that the wing piece. Like, I like the
I
little
like the
drumstick.
little drum.
to eat that.
I like them both.
wing.
Yeah.
I like them both. You
But-
gotta
but-
fry
but
them.
I-
You gotta fry them up crispy.
I mention them because they are served right here on the menu with Kraft blue cheese dressing and celery. So getting the sponsor.
know it.
But the great thing is the accompaniments. And one of the accompaniments, in addition to potato or a medley of vegetables, is the trilogy of rice.
Wow.
Dun, dun,
Yes.
dun.
Let's see. So there's Rice Wars, The Rice Strikes Back, and Revenge of the Rice.
It is.
You've gone to the brown side.
Yeah, I am fascinated by that terminology. But the best part is the back of this menu has a rundown of all of the Kraft brands with their logos. And so it's Kraft, Philadelphia Cream Cheese, Cracker Barrel, Miracle Whip, Seal Test, Velveeta, Parquet, and Light and Lively, which was what they marketed yogurts and milks like skim milk back then.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And so I suppose I should mention the desserts. Nothing exciting here. Angel food cake, chocolate mousse cake, baked apple tart for two. We talked about that in that land episode because they serve that a couple of different places on the property. So anyway, that is the land grill room, which is still rotating today, except everything is served family style. And Chippendale and Mickey's and Pluto stop by to visit you now during that meal.
So Brian, let's just take a quick walk over to the coral reef that's been there since the opening, because I have another got another anecdote about that one as well, along the lines, ironically, of fish. So what do you have first?
Well, I just wanted to note that one of the things they used to do there, and we have a copy of it, is they would hand out a fish finder. It was a little fold-over booklet. It looks like Todd's got one.
I got one. I got to get it up. I have.
Yeah, where you would, they'd give it to kids or adults who were dining in the restaurant there, which looks out onto the aquarium if you've never been there. And so you can look at fish while you eat fish. And these guys, it would tell you the different kinds of fish that are in the, like little cartoon drawings of the different kinds of fish that are in the tank. And kids could color them in and circle them as the fish swam by, and they could identify them. It gave them something to do during the meal. So that was a neat thing that they used to do.
So in the fish finder here, we've got a whole bunch of them. We have Sergeant Major, the pork fish, the yellow-tailed damselfish, a blue tang, the chub, the grouper. I don't even know some of these. The spot butterfly fish and the hogfish. But yeah, I'll show it to the guys here. It's great, and they on the back it gives some statistics of the living seas tank, and staff of 40 technical specialists work on it. So I mentioned earlier about the Stargate restaurant, the Sunrise Terrace, and being fresh fish and battered. And when I was reading through Birnbaum the other night, I came across something regarding the Empress Room on the Empress Lily, where they questioned the freshness of the fish. And when the Coral Reef, opened it was 1986 when it opened. And this is the 1986 edition of Birnbaum. And what he actually says in there is the menu will feature fresh fish and shellfish, a welcome offering since much of the world's seafood is frozen. So, 3-4 references in this guidebook alone to, a big deal of the seafood being fresh in these specific restaurants. So, and also calling out when it wasn't. So kind of interesting there. I'm wondering how much that has to do with Central Foods and everything else. And these were quite a departure, having stuff flown in. But, hey, Red Lobster was doing it. Why couldn't they do it for one restaurant or two in the resort? So anyway, kind of an interesting little thing there I found. But let's take a walk over into World Showcase. And do you guys remember eating in Le Cellier before it became the sit-down restaurant, when it was buffet?
I don't
eat over there?
I don't remember eating there, but I do have a menu from there.
You do? Well,
yeah, I do. I have a Le Cellier menu from I have my note here says the 1980s. Because there was a period of time, it went through two different iterations. If you recall, at one point it was a buffet. A buffeteria, which was Disney's use of the term for buffets.
I ate there in 96. It was still a buffet then.
Yeah, so
it was really good.
I have a a sit-down menu that probably was their first attempt at actually creating a steakhouse there versus what it was. The cheddar cheese soup at the time, if we're dating this, was $2.95, which today it's like $9 or whatever. So I don't know when that puts this menu, but they had the Canadian ice wine there, and
Labatt's was on tap.
Labatt's was on tap, and Molson, an Elephant Red. But really, I'm looking at this menu, and there's nothing else that's particularly exciting. It's just steak and pasta and glazed salmon.
Here's a great quote. It talks about all the offerings, and it says, the combination of all this should make Les Celliers a prime destination for those who haven't been able to get a dinner reservation in one of the more publicized World Showcase restaurants, but still want to eat something more substantial.
That's so funny, because it's
isn't
the
that funny?
reverse now. I mean,
a complete opposite. You can't even get in. And it says you should avoid the rush hours. Well, yeah, don't eat between 5:30 and 8. We know that. So a lot of things really haven't changed in World Showcase, right? I mean, the Rose and Crown, maybe some menu changes over the years, but most of the restaurants...
Yeah, they've all undergone menu changes. They have added restaurants. So, I mean, obviously we know they added Spice Road Table in front of Morocco, which is what...
Via Napoli was new, but there was what was the other restaurant in Italy that was there?
When they opened, the original Alfredo's was there, and that was opened by the family that created fettuccine Alfredo in Italy. So they opened their restaurant there, and the most fattening possible way to serve pasta was there for fame. And I remember my one time eating there. It was like 1,004 degrees in Florida that day. And so I make my way back, and I, for some reason, decide it's a great day to have this butter and cheese pasta, like the heaviest thing that you could possibly have for lunch. I remember getting about 10 bites in and being like, I can't possibly put another forkful of this in my mouth, and I feel ill. I am sure for fettuccine Alfredo fans, it was a great destination, but the day that I experienced it was remember that scene in Anchorman where he's in the phone booth chugging the milk, and he goes, "Oh, milk was a bad choice today." That was me. That was me eating the fettuccine Alfredo.
That was the first place I ever ate fettuccine Alfredo. And
really?
Probably yes. That because that was the place that had it.
Right.
And then I tried it later on at the Olive Garden and was like, what is this? This is not the same as what I had at Epcot. So it ruined me on fettuccine Alfredo. But I've heard other people say that they didn't care for it there. They liked it much better at other places.
I didn't have, I believe the only time I ate there was 96. And I believe I had chicken parm.
I had it.
Really good.
It was my first Epcot trip. Didn't enjoy it. Very thick. It was a heavy fettuccine Alfredo.
Did it have the singing waiters?
Don't know if they had the singing waiters in there. They were very, as they were in a lot of those restaurants. I mean, France and both of the restaurants in France, jacketed waiters with the the towel over their one arm, and I mean, they went very fancy for a lot of those sit down restaurants in World Showcase at the time. But they've added the wine bar as well to...
Yeah, and Tutto Italia is now in where Alfredo
the original Alfredo's is, right.
Alfredo,
and the other one that obviously is a major addition was they built the second Mexican restaurant on the water. Mm-hmm. Well, they built it on the water, but it doesn't have water views, which is an odd thing that they did there. They put that restaurant in. It's probably 7 or 8 years ago now, right? That they opened that.
Yeah. That's got to be right.
Somewhere around there that they opened that second, originally the San Angel Inn, which is still inside, and then outside. The name is escaping me at the moment, but they
La Hacienda de San Angel, which confuses a lot of people because it's like it's the same name twice. So just with a slight difference to it.
Yeah, so they've added that. I have those two menus from the beer garden. So we should mention that the beer garden for a long time was you ordered off of a menu. It was not a buffet in the back as it is now. So for years you would go in there and order. And one of the reasons I remember this is on our trip there in either 95 or 98, we went to the beer garden and I ordered duck, which is not something that I had eaten before. And I got violently ill. And so as a result, unless you serve me like a duck egg roll or something, I do not eat duck. So beer garden eternally ruined it for me 20 years ago.
I ate there. I think I ate there once or twice, and it was buffet by that point. But I don't know. The buffets or buffeterias, as you mentioned earlier, I don't know. I always find the cost be cost prohibitive, at least.
Yeah.
Especially when you're traveling with a child in tow. So before we ended up, Brian, you've got some children's menus, and I've got some. So while we're in Epcot, you've got some from France, and then I'll talk about a couple of the kids' menus that I've got here as well.
Well, it's an interesting study to see how tastes change and how they tried to up their game. In 1982, I have a very cool kids menu that was used at both Chefs de France and Bistro de Paris. Those are the upstairs and downstairs restaurants in France. And they had the same kids menu for both with some really cool characters across the top. And it was a breast of chicken, ground beef steaks. Well, it was a hamburger that they dressed up to sound like something fancy. And then a fillet of orange roughy. So those were your three options for kids. And they were all $4, by the way, $3.99 for those in 1982. 4 years later, in 1986, much fancier. So they had a beef braised with carrots and onions. This is a kid's menu. A casserole of, this is macaroni and cheese with chicken. Casserole of chicken breast and macaroni topped with Swiss cheese. Or, and I can't imagine a kid wanting this, but a large crepe filled with minced beef, mushrooms topped with tomato and cheese.
Mommy, I just want chicken fingers.
Well, as you touched on earlier, chicken fingers didn't really come into their own until a few nuggets were kind of just coming around in 82, 83. So
when did McDonald's actually start the chicken nugget?
McNuggets was either 82 or 83. I forget. I mean, I remember it because I was a kid at the time, and it was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever, these chicken McNuggets. But yeah, so you're just at the beginning of the nugget phase, and my recollection of chicken tenders and chicken strips was they were more of a 90s thing. I mean, I know they were around before that, but I don't remember them replacing nuggets until the 90s. So there's your history of chicken nuggets and chicken strips.
So I have a couple other, as we leave Epcot here, I have a couple other kids menus before we wrap up. I have one from Bonne Famille in Port Orleans Resort, which, Brian, you mentioned earlier. The kids menu that you had was it was a coloring book, right? And this one here is a photo album that apparently follows the characters. What was the character? This is from the Aristocats, and it has an entire story to go through, and the menu at the end for $2.95. It's really kind of hard to figure what you're eating. One is called Scales, which is apparently a grilled cheese sandwich, and the Jazzy Gator is hot dogs served with curly fries. And there was one really odd one in here. Here it is here. The roll-ups, peanut butter and jelly stuffed pancakes dipped in batter, fried, and then topped with powdered sugar. So
interesting. So it's great that you bring up Bonne Famille's, because I wanted to talk before we end the show about both Bonne Famille's and about Ariel's, which are two resort restaurants that opened with their resorts and then were closed after the downturn rather in tourism after 9/11. And neither one has ever reopened. The one, Bonne Famille's, which is in Port Orleans French Quarter, was a sit-down restaurant. I have the menu here. I just actually sent to you guys the drink menu because I am interested in Hal's take on some of these drink concoctions that they offered. but it's the Nolan's Ice, which was a combination of peach, blackberry, and banana in a creamy blend topped with dark rum. Sounds very refreshing. Yes.
I think the first one's trying to be a hurricane, the Mardi Gras punch.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking too.
Yeah.
Fruity rum punch that made New Orleans famous. But while you guys look at that, there were a couple of interesting menu items here that they really stuck with the Cajun theme at the restaurant. I mean, the whole menu has a lot of gumbo and andouille sausage and things like that. But two appetizers I want to mention: the Fire and Ice Cajun grilled shrimp, served with a cool bread salad.
Bread salad sounds good.
I'll take that. Thank you.
The second one, which is Cajun popcorn, and that was deep fried crawfish tails seasoned with Cajun spices and accompanied by a Cajun remoulade sauce. I thought both of those were interesting types of things you wouldn't catch on the menus today. Well, you might catch on the menus today, but for a long time you wouldn't. But and if we move over to the entrees, there were a couple on here that it's got all the stuff you would expect, which is etouffee and scallops and shrimp. And there is one of the last places I remember seeing before the foodie revolution of the last 5 or 6 years in the parks. An attempt to incorporate citrus, a seared citrus trout.
Ooh.
So, that was one of fresh fillet of rainbow trout, pan-seared and topped with a delicate citrus butter sauce with mashed sweet potatoes and sautéed vegetables for $16.99. This is the last menu that they actually served in the restaurant before they closed it in 2001. So, that is one of the things that we're going to put up on our site. But I also have the menu and want to mention Ariel's. And Ariel's was the sit-down restaurant in the beach club. So the yacht club opened and it had the Captain's Grill, which was their casual restaurant, and the Yachtsman Steakhouse, which was their higher end one. And the beach club has the Cape May Cafe, which is their more casual, and then Ariel's, which was their fancier sit-down restaurant. And they closed Ariel's after 9/11, and it has never reopened, except unlike Bonfamie's, Ariel's is available for private events. So you can, rent Ariel's for a cocktail reception or a wedding reception or anything like that. And if you're in the beach club, you see it being used fairly regularly if you pass by. It's actually in use right now because as they've been renovating the yacht club, they temporarily located Captain's Galley over there. So I had an opportunity to eat there a few months back and eat in the air. So they've kept the decor. It looks like obviously ocean blues and all that inside, but it's got kind of Murano glass sculptures from the ceiling that look like fish and octopus and things like that. But so I have the menu here from that. And I want to mention a couple of the things that were on that menu. Obviously, there's plenty of seafood, the big item on the menu was Where the Sea Meets the Land, which was their surf and turf options, which they had beef and they had lobster. But the real reason that I would have probably wanted to go there is Ariel's Strudel, which is not a dessert. It's a fresh chicken breast accompanied by ricotta cheese, fresh basil pastry, and a creamy champagne mushroom sauce. Sounds very rich and very delicious. That Ariel can cook.
Now that she has her dingle hopper.
Yes. So that's it. I just wanted to mention Ariel's because there are not a lot of defunct resort restaurants that are just kind of sitting there unused. But Bonfamie's and Ariel's are just sitting there. So
yeah, it's a shame. I know they used Bonfamie's at some point when they redid the Riverworks.
And I got to eat there too. It was open when I was there New Year's week, Christmas week, 2 years ago, 2015. They opened it for like a 12-day stretch with this Cajun family-style meal. And we had, not only did we have a great meal there, we had a great time because the place, it's like a time capsule. I mean, they built that resort in 1990. And the restaurant is perfectly in great condition, and it's unchanged. So the cover of the Bonfamie's menu is the fountain that they have in this little courtyard there. And when we were there, it was all closed up. And so I asked the server, I said, is it okay if we go out and take some pictures in this courtyard they built? And she said, yeah, go ahead. The doors are open. So we went out and we took about 15 minutes worth of pictures just looking around at everything out there. It was really neat.
I ate there a number of years ago. I enjoyed it. It's sad to see it close. But, yeah, the belt tightening. Well, as we wrap this up, guys, I got a little thing. We don't normally do this, but I wanted to test some of the knowledge here. So here's what I'm going to do. I have about 10 or 12 obscure restaurant and snack bar names all around mid-'80s. I'm just going to call one out, and whoever can tell me where it is the fastest will get a point. We'll do a couple of these. I'm just curious how many of these oddball ones we can pick out here. So you guys good with that?
I'm ready.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
All right. So here's the first one. And some of these, get my score pad here. Some of these may not be, overly familiar, and some may be. But, all right, here's the first one. The Beach Shack. All right. So let's see here. The Dock Inn.
That's my cricket sound.
They were a great heavy metal band.
Nobody wants to be wrong.
This could completely fail here. No, that was at the Contemporary. All right.
Nice.
All right, let's see if we can find the Enchanted Grove.
The Enchanted Grove is Magic Kingdom, right by the
Fantasyland,
right by the teacups.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, you got that.
Sponsored by Minute Maid.
The Fisherman's Deck.
Fisherman's Deck was it was at the Empress Lily.
Empress Lily.
In fact,
Brian got it in there.
In fact, I have the menu for it.
All right, here's one. How you should get this one. The Lancer's Inn.
Oh, yeah, Fantasyland.
Magic Kingdom. Which became Gergie's.
That's right. There we go.
And then became Mrs. Potts' Cupboard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Mile Long Bar.
Frontierland, Magic Kingdom. Next to the Country Bear Jamboree.
You got it.
With the famous double mirror effect.
Yep. The Outer Reef.
Not the Outer Rim, right?
Reef.
Not the Outer Rim, the Outer Reef.
I want to say Living Seas, but no.
Huh.
No, it's a tricky one. It actually is what is now the Outer Rim. It was called the Outer Reef.
I'm going to give myself credit for it.
We'll give you credit for that. We're going to put an X down there. All right, let's see here. The Players Gallery.
Golf Resort.
Yeah. You got it, Hal? All right, you guys are neck and neck here. So, Pop's Place.
Oh, that's
River Country.
Oh, there you go, JT. You're on the board. All right. Let's see here. The Sandbar.
Contemporary.
There you go, JT. You're catching up. All right. The Space Bar.
That's Tomorrowland.
Boom. How? The Starboard Lounge.
Huh.
I'll go with the Yacht Club.
No. Any guesses?
Caribbean Beach.
No.
I'll just keep guessing.
All right, we're going to end it there. It was on the main deck of the Empress Lily.
Oh.
All right. And
we didn't have the gold key playing, so we couldn't go there.
I never did.
I did. We ate at the Empress Lily.
Yeah.
Oh, I never went to that room. I had we did a character breakfast there. Yeah. All right, a couple more here. The Terrace Cafe.
Tomorrowland.
No.
Lord, there are terraces
Terrace
everywhere.
Club?
Is that the golf resort?
Nope. It was the Contemporary, adjoining the Terrace Buffeteria.
Buffeteria.
All right. Here's a rare one. The Thirsty Perch.
Oh. I feel like I've heard that.
That was on Discovery Island, right?
There you go.
Got it. Yep. The Tournament Tent.
Golf resort.
Nope.
No, that's Fantasyland.
Fantasyland.
Oh,
that's
they're
correct.
going with the horses.
Yep.
And
You go. All right. Trophy Room.
Golf resort.
Golf resort. And let's see here. We're going to leave it with an easy one here. The Villa Center.
At the at the Lake Buena Vista Villas?
The villas, yes, the vacation villa pool area.
But they really stretched for that.
Yeah, I didn't
they?
But I would. So our total here: how 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Brian with 4 and JT with 2. What I thought was interesting, a lot of them are very, misleading. Like even you said, JT, the Outer Reef sounds like Coral Reef, and what does the Outer Reef have to do with the 4th floor of the Contemporary Resort?
Really.
So. I want to post a disclaimer though at the end of this episode here as we're wrapping up. We know we did not touch it all on Lake Buena Vista and the downtown Disney. There is that could be a whole episode just of the things that have come and gone from down there, even into Pleasure Island and the Missing Link and places like that we could touch on. And we did not spend a lot of time in the resorts, and there's a lot to talk about in the resorts. So at the risk of putting you all to sleep, I think we'll stick a pin in those and maybe come back to them either in an episode or come back to them periodically as a filler in some of our future episodes.
Give us some feedback if this was something you'd like us to continue on. I know we've done souvenir ones and we had listener questions and we got a lot of great positive feedback on that. But if this is something that a lot of our listeners don't want to hear about, we'll gladly take the pin out and not return. I know we've got a lot of other things to do.
I completely forgot to mention the Adventureland veranda serving tray that I have hanging on the wall in the other room.
I got the goofy kids breakfast that turns into the splattered eggs mask, put on.
And
there's a lot more.
And that menu you have there, which is a late 80s, early 90s, that also has the goofy toast on it, right? It's really just eggs in a hole, toad in the hole.
Exactly. Yeah, goofy toast. Yep.
Yeah,
it has the Mickey cake and the Mickey waffle on it. So, well, with that, I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. We have a couple things to go over before we wrap this all up. But
and I have the 3 original menus from the opening of MGM. So I have the 50s Primetime, the Sci-Fi Dine-In, and the Brown Derby, all of which, when we go live with our menu section on our website, those will all be there for you, along with a lot of this other stuff we've talked about. So some real cool stuff coming for you.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to get the site up by the time the podcast episode hits.
No.
Yeah, it'll be coming. It'll be definitely coming. There's a lot of work to do on it. Stay tuned. That's right. And I'm sure Hal wants to talk about the Catwalk Bar, so we'll do that at some point.
And we want your menus still. If you have menus,
that's right.
email
you got
them
menus,
to us.
Send them in, and thank you.
Or pictures from inside the restaurants.
Yep,
any of that
anything.
stuff.
So, all right, as always, we'll go over our merchandise, which you can find at retrowdw.com/support us. And did you get any inspiration from this episode?
Well, the one thing that really struck me about Brian's stuff the last time we talked about this was the handwich.
Yeah.
So there's this sort of like this style of art which, oddly enough, it's like I've been doing sketches of this for like a year and a half, like waiting for the right time to put it out.
Oh wow!
And now there's actually like an official Disney line of like cute, like little food items and attraction vehicles and things. So I'm gonna do a really cute handwich T-shirt.
There we go.
A little kawaii, like cutesy hand.
So as always, you can find all of Hal's designs at retrowdw.com/support us. We've got the Universe of Energy shirts from last week with the Radox screens, our Looking Back at Tomorrow shirts, and you can find all the different great merchandise. Keep your eyes peeled for us on Twitter and Facebook. We let you know when there's sales, and there's been a couple big ones recently, 20 and 30% off. So keep your eyes peeled for those. Speaking of the event, we've got our event coming up on September 30th at the Living Seas Lounge. Guys, are you getting excited yet? I know there's a lot we want to say about it, and we can't yet. We've had some wonderful developments. Some we can talk about. We did announce that Corinne Gillis will be joining us, who has played the granddaughter in Horizon. She's going to be there telling us a little bit about her experience of being filmed and turned into an audio animatronic figure. There's a lot of stuff we can't talk about yet that has transpired in the past couple days and weeks. So,
I mean, the extra tidbits that I have found out, it's like I think everyone is going to be very pleasantly surprised by some of the
I'm excited
secret guests.
Yeah, I'm excited to go to the event, and I already know everything that's going to happen.
Brian's got that watching your kid at Christmas feeling. You start getting all the gifts, and then you're excited for them to open them.
That's right.
But I don't want to have to put them together on event Eve.
That's right. There certainly has been a lot of work going into this, the planning, and we're all going to be partaking in a lot to get this thing done, and we have a very small window to set up and get everything going. But Disney's been really great to work with. We should have all the final things tallied up and taken care of in the next week or so. And then it's just a matter of getting ourselves down there and waiting. But we can't wait to see every one of you coming to it. I know our guests are excited about it. And we cannot wait to show you what we have in store and present everything to you. So I think you're really going to have a great time. And so looking forward to it. As we mentioned, there is a waiting list. So if you're interested in putting your name on that waiting list, go to retro.wdw.com/Epcot35. And we did have 2 tickets that we released on the waiting list earlier this week. We might have some more potentially, but keep your eyes peeled. If we can, we'll do what we can to get a couple more people in the door. So for those of you who may not be able to make the event on September 30th, we are going to have a chance for you guys to meet up with us and do a short walking tour of some areas within Epcot. And it's going to be between the 2 events that D23 is putting on. I believe one end probably around 3:30. I think the other one picks up around 5:30 or 6, if I recall correctly.
2:30. The one ends at
2:30. Okay. So as we get closer and we know a specific meeting place and time that we're going to do that, the 4 of us will take you around and point out some things. And there's no charge for this. It's just going to be meet up with us, and we'll walk around and show you a couple of the things that we know at Epcot that are, little pieces of the past that are still there. So we're looking forward to meeting some of you that way too, if you can't join in on the main event. All right. So with that, guys, we were going to talk about some films this month, but obviously we're out of time. We've been going for a while, so maybe we'll table that to next month. But a lot of great new films coming out. We released another one from 1972 this week. Brian, you took the weekend off essentially and watched 15 different films.
I worked all weekend.
You worked all weekend. And you've seen the footage. You've seen it all now, as opposed to I've edited it all and cleaned it up. You've actually sat down and watched it. We got some pretty cool stuff coming.
I tweeted last night that having sat through it all, some of which we're holding for our event, some of which we are holding for future big anniversaries and stuff that we've got cool. But we have some stuff on film, more than one thing. I mentioned the Polynesian second floor tonight. That we have this footage outside of the Coral Isle Cafe and some other areas around the Polynesian. But we've got something on film that isn't at Disney anymore, that was only there in the 70s, that to our knowledge, no one has film of. No. So it's, I'm not going to say what it is, but it's something we're going to roll out. Maybe, I don't know when we'll do it. But
yeah, I think there's a couple episodes where we could roll that out. And yeah. I don't even know, there's not many photos of this.
There are sparse photos of this very interesting item, but to my knowledge, there is no photos or footage of it moving. And we've got footage of it moving. So this is an exciting thing, and we'll let you all wonder. Maybe we'll hold a contest, and whoever guesses it blindly and sends us an email or a tweet or something and gets it right, maybe we'll let you see it before everybody else.
That's right. So send your guesses to podcast@retro.wdw.com and just title it "Film Guess," and we'll see if you can figure it out. But so a lot of exciting things coming up. We also acquired a couple other films that we'll be sending off. And we've got some Epcot footage and a lot of other great things coming your way. So stay tuned on that. And our famous friends Art and Linda will be making a reappearance a couple times, not only in the fall, but in the holiday season too.
You're going to be spending about 40 minutes with Art and Linda over the course of the next 6 months.
Right through to Christmas with the pageantry. If anybody remembers, Art and Linda were the ones that we had the Fort Wilderness Railroad footage. And they did their honeymoon there. They went back with their first child. And they took a lot of really, really interesting footage and some things that aren't even there anymore. So, it'd be great to see.
And were they going to be on the walking tour, or?
We have no evidence. We have no evidence they ever made it to Epcot. So.
No, we don't. And the funny thing is that I accidentally sent their wedding reel in when I sent them all in. So I paid to have their entire 300-foot wedding converted. So if you know Art and Linda, let them know I have their wedding. I accidentally digitized their wedding.
That should be our next event. We should have a wedding reception for Art and Linda. Run the film and put a full wedding reception on.
That's right. So
like they have to be out there, their kids or
I
somebody.
know. So, but anyway, well, with that, everybody, thank you very much for listening. We appreciate all your comments and emails, your tweets. Like I said, the feedback, as always, has been wonderful and positive and really appreciated. If you can give us a review and a shout out on iTunes or anywhere else, they're reviews for us. And until next month, Brian, take us out.
Follow Todd McCartney and Retro WDW on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Retro WDW. For all things Retro Disney World, including exclusive merchandise, visit us on the web at RetroWDW.com. On Twitter, follow our web designer Jason Bartel of Deepwater Studios at JasonDWS, our announcer Andre Gardner at Andre Gardner, and follow our hosts Hal Bowers on Twitter and Instagram at GoAwayGreen, and on the web at kingdomofmemories.com. For JT Kujar on Twitter at LS1JT, on YouTube at Rubber City Motoring, and on the web at rubbercitymotoring.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Brian P. Miles.